Welcome to Advancing Accessibility, a podcast series focused on the great work done by individuals pushing for accessibility in the gaming industry and answering the question, what's next? This show is brought to you by Player Research's Advancing Accessibility. To find out more about what Player Research and this initiative, you can be able to go to the link in the show notes or to playerresearch.com. I'm Steve Saylor, an accessibility consultant, content creator, Twitch ambassador, and host of this series. And in today's episode, it's all about the state of assistive technology in gaming. And my guest today is accessibility journalist and also accessibility advocate, and you're just a really good bud, Grant Stoner. Grant, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. We're very excited to have you on, especially talking about assistive technology in and just how it's kind of like from the past, the present, and future. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into any of that, why don't you tell us like a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I'm an accessibility journalist in the gaming industry. My articles explore the disabled perspective and how disabled players interact with the space, as well as developer innovation. So a lot of my stories, I'll go behind the scenes and interview developers about the tech they're using to make their games accessible, innovations from previous titles, and how they're advancing accessibility throughout the years. My work basically gives disabled players a microphone to express their concerns and to celebrate their wins and basically just have a voice in the industry. And I've been doing it for 5 years now, I think, professionally.
Wow, actually, yeah, I think I was just thinking myself, like, how long have I been doing this for? And I think it's roughly about that long, like at least like 5. I mean, I'm going back as far as maybe 2017, but I mean, I think we kind of like started roughly around the same time, which was great. I love what you said about giving disabled voices a microphone, because oftentimes advocacy is very much that aspect. It's very much we're advocating and like basically putting a microphone in front of folks who are doing the work, and but also folks who, you know, that we need basically to create these games for, and they need to be heard, because oftentimes people with disabilities are kind of overlooked or made to look invisible. So I love that analogy, and I'm gonna use it in the future. I hope you're okay with me stealing that, because that's a great line.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's kind of go even a little bit further back into kind of a little bit of your history. Like, what got you interested in gaming? Like, when was it? What was like the first sort of games that you were interested in?
I grew up with gaming. It's been a staple in my life for as long as I can remember. My first vivid memory I have is playing Super Nintendo in my parents' bedroom on like a 16-inch like TV. Remember those like tube TVs with the antenna? Yeah. And I was playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Turtles in Time.
Ooh, that's a great one to start off with. I love that.
And my grandma was playfully teasing me about how Michelangelo was orange, because yellow is my favorite color. I was arguing with her right now, he's yellow. But I have played games since I was very young. My occupational therapist actually encouraged my parents to let me play games instead of like, you know, don't restrict him for several hours. Like, let him just go because I help with my hands. Because of my disability, I've never been able to do physical activities, obviously. So I would just play games. I would interact with my classmates, my family, and other friends through gaming. And then as I grew, I developed an interest in gaming as a career, and I wasn't able to be a developer because of my restrictions, so instead I turned to journalism.
I definitely want to
write about.
Yeah, I definitely want to put a pin in that one, because we'll definitely get into that in a second. But I do want to actually kind of go back. You mentioned about this is actually something I didn't know about in regards to that video games was sort of recommended to you as far as like as physical therapy. What was it that like when you were kind of going through that and and doctors were sort of recommending it. What was sort of the, if you don't mind me asking, like kind of like the kind of, you can talk about a little bit about your disability and what you were able to do and were not able to do, and like how did video games really help you kind of like develop as you know as you grew and as you grew older and you know and reflexes are starting to kind of change, and how did that sort of help, and what did video games improve upon when you started and to when you stopped doing physical therapy?
So I have a neuromuscular disorder called spinal muscular atrophy type 2.
Hmm.
There's, I believe, 5 types. I think the fifth type was just revealed a world premiere um, several years ago.
Hmm.
But I have type 2, and it's a progressive disability that weakens my muscles over time.
Hmm.
So when I was young, my hand strength was significantly better than what it is now. My range of motion, my dexterity, so I was able to play different controllers like Super Nintendo, N64, PS2, GameCube, all of those systems, Game Boys, handhelds. And then as I grew older, and as my disability progressed, my hands began to atrophy more.
Mm.
So I relied on simplistic games or handmade modifications. So that my brother famously taped a popsicle stick to my 360 controller because of the way my hand was shaped. I wasn't able to reach the right trigger,
Hmm.
so the popsicle stick wrapped around and laid on top of it, so I could just pull the stick and it would pull the trigger for me.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. Um, and then as I grew older, as studios released more inclusive designs and better features, um, I was no longer limited to what I was able to play. And since I've even transitioned to now, I'm primarily a PC gamer,
Right.
just because it's just easier,
Yeah.
and it has more options and settings from a system level.
I
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, but uh, my evolution of gaming was dependent upon what studios were making to allow me to play their games.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, you know, as we both know, that kind of grew more and more complex as time went
Mhm.
on, and I think even at a certain point became difficult for both of us. But what was sort of the like you said you mentioned you went into journalism because you didn't think you could be a game dev at the time. With with going into journalism, was gaming journalism kind of something you were wanting to do, or is it just journalism in general, or was it sort of like you saw that as a way to get into like get your foot in the door, so to speak, even though you can barely use it as a joke, to get into the industry, as it were.
um, so I actually wanted nothing to do with accessibility when I first started out
Mm,
because I had a lot of internalized ableism with myself.
sure.
So I wanted to do games journalism, but not talk at all about my disability or even disabled communities. I want to just be a, you know, air quotes, normal game journalist.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I was in college, I was writing for the school newspaper. And my editor at the time, who is still to this day one of my best friends, was like, hey, I want you to review Nintendo Switch, but I want you to do an accessibility review.
Mm.
I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, I'm just not publishing it. So I did it, and 6 months later, it won second place in the Keystone Press Awards, which is
Ooh.
the Pennsylvania statewide journalism award program. It won second place for reviews. Um,
Oh. So
And
you
for,
already are an award-winning journalist before you even got into this, sir, and yeah, you you get like so humble about the fact you've won like 2 big, huge accessibility journalism awards. But all right, fine, okay,
yeah,
you know, just winning's just part of your personality, I guess.
but, yeah, I just, from that moment on, I was like, oh, maybe there is a need and a desire for this kind of work. And I
Mm-hmm.
worked through a lot of my own internal struggles with identity and who I wanted to be. And then from there, it was just, that was it. I just kept writing about accessibility.
Was it like when you were going through that journey of figuring out who you are with a disability and also like writing about it from a journalism standpoint? Is that what like when was sort of the turning point of like yes no I think like advocating for accessibility and also being like advocating for accessibility within the journalist like sort of the community or at least on the gaming media side, when was that turning point for you to be like, yeah, okay, this is where I think I need to be?
Um, my Nintendo Switch review, a creator, I don't know if he wants me to mention his name anymore. I don't think he's been creating. But a
Okay.
creator designed a 3D printed one-handed device for Nintendo Switch,
Mm-hmm.
where you can put both the Joy-Cons into this device and you can use it in one hand. And his creation went viral. It was written about everywhere, and then Polygon actually linked my Nintendo Switch review into their article talking about this device because at the time he reached out to me on Twitter and asked me if this would work. I was like, I don't think it can, but he still talked about how him reading my review and his own personal experiences is what drove him to make this device. And then that kind of went, I don't know if it went viral, but like for me it did, 'cause I was still in college. And that was also like the moment I was like, oh my gosh, people around the world are interacting with this. I thought, oh my gosh, this, apparently people need this
Mm-hmm.
information. And then I started doing consistent accessibility reviews. My first ever interview story was with Ian Hamilton
Mm-hmm.
at college. I emailed Ian as a young student. I was like, let me interview you. He's like, yeah, sure. It just kept going from there. It just kept progressing to me realizing it was important and people needed to read this information. And more importantly, it wasn't about me. It was about everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
which I always set out to do. I don't want my stories being about me. I want them to reflect the thousands, if not millions, of others who need to have their voices heard.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about advocacy that I think every advocate kind of goes through to a certain degree is that it is at first it's your story, like it you know it's your first like your lived in experience, and that talking about it from that perspective is what is super important, and then over time. As you start to be, be a part of the community in the space, you start to kind of realize or notice a lot more folks who are, actually like doing the work and doing the things that you've been advocating for. And we start to kind of focus and like, open the door for them to be like, hey, look at what these great folks are doing. And I think that like, what essentially what we both do in this space, whether it's myself with like content creation and streaming and also consulting, but then also like on your end when you're advocating for and writing about this, the people behind the scenes and celebrating, but also in a sense like calling out certain things that need to be called out because some of your articles have like sort of been that kind of so like had a little bit of soapbox, but but using that soapbox for other people to stand on. And you're just kind of like showcasing what others are feeling and talking about. When you were kind of going through those kind of articles, because unfortunately, we talk about accessibility, and yes, it can be inspirational, it can be like super positive, especially when you see studios making games that are extremely like amazing for accessibility, and we love celebrating those. But when we do need to sort of advocate for, hey, we definitely like need to see these kind of things change. What kind of what kind of when you see the feedback from that, both from the developer side and on the sort of just the public side, how does that sort of like going back to when you were advocating for yourself? What kind of feelings do you have when you're writing those kind of stories, in that you're like, hey, you're just trying to advocate for people?
At the end of the day, it's not about my opinions on something, because we're friends, I'm very opinionated. Um, at the end of the day, when I'm writing, it's not about what I think, unless it's a review. If I'm doing a review, then it is uh, all about what I think, because that's the purpose of a review. It's my opinion. But when I'm writing like features and interviews and even investigative reports, my purpose is to fully remove myself and make sure that the message that needs to be heard is heard either through developers who are promoting these features or communities who are either celebrating them or critiquing them, rightfully so, for a myriad of reasons. It's never. I learned very quickly, that my perspective is just a tiny drop compared to the millions of people who are experiencing games and the barriers that they encounter. So I try to never get frustrated with, oh, I wouldn't say this or I wouldn't do this. It's always, right, this is the conversations I've had with these people. Here's what they want. I will make sure to say exactly what they want.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like you want the basically players to be able to play as many games as possible, especially for disabled players. So I think that again, as you said earlier, holding up that microphone to them is a great way to do it, and you do it so well, sir. So
Thank you.
no, it's not about me; it's about you, sir. But today, I mean, our topic is about advancing assistive technology in gaming, and how, like, we're going to take a look at sort of the past and what we currently have now, and then looking into the future. So, the first question I want to ask you, Grant, is what type of assistive technology do you use when playing games?
Yeah, I use a Xbox adaptive controller, as well as roughly 11 switches from the Logitech Adaptive Gaming Kit. And then 2 joysticks from Warfire Engaged. And then they design several third-party buttons and sticks you can plug into the device. I also use the PlayStation Access controller, and then some of the leftover buttons from the Adaptive Gaming Kit I use with that. And so I don't use any specialized controllers. What I do is I pair the Xbox and PlayStation controllers with a standard Xbox and PlayStation controller.
Okay.
So the one hand, usually my left, is operating the adaptive equipment, and then
Okay.
my other hand, the right, is on the standard controller, and it uses the face buttons to press buttons and everything.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So you basically, yeah, that's what you only use an actual controller for, is just the face buttons, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So how do you what do you use? Like you said, you have a few joysticks. How do you sort of like being like switch between, because obviously there's two joysticks on a regular controller. Like how do you handle sort of like the movement and also the camera joysticks when you're playing games?
I can't. When
Okay.
I was younger, I used to be able to use both sticks with my hand. I also used a standard controller. But since my disabilities progressed to the point that it is at now, I'm unable to use two sticks. So I usually heavily rely on um, accessible designs or settings in games to either remove those barriers or alleviate them in some function. Excuse me. So, for example, I rely on single stick movement,
Okay.
which basically means if I'm moving my character with the left stick, the camera also follows.
Hmm.
Some games do that really well, like The Last of Us, I believe, as an option. Kingdom Hearts,
Yep.
that's traditionally how the movement is, and all the games I've released. Star Wars, the Jedi series,
Oh,
they
okay.
also have single stick movement. Um, and if they don't have those options or designs, I then switch to PC or my
Gotcha.
Switch.
Okay, so when you're so though that's kind of like your console setup. What
Mhm.
like when you said when you move over to your PC, what do you use on your PC to play games?
I use just a standard keyboard with my
Okay.
right hand, and I
Yeah.
can only use roughly 7 keys.
Okay.
It used to be 11, but again, with the progression of my disability.
Sure.
Um, and I use a Logitech G903 mouse,
Okay.
which has 11 buttons that I can access with just my uh, left hand. Excuse me. Um, so it allows me to perform most actions. Like, for example, Destiny 2. I
Hmm.
know you're a big fan of that.
Yes.
I play on PC, and most of the character actions are bound to my mouse.
Oh,
So
interesting.
shooting, aiming, jumping, sprinting, ability, grenades, and melee are
Hmm.
all on my mouse.
Okay. Okay. And
Whereas
oh no,
my
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just saying, whereas my movement and my super are on my keyboard.
Ah, okay. So when you're using your mouse as sort of like your camera, so to speak, or you're being able to aim, do you have to like increase the sensitivity in games in order
Yeah.
for it to be able to have the full range of motion?
So my DPI currently is 6400.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
Wow.
If you sneeze, my mouse flies across the screen. But because of my limited motion,
Hmm.
it's not sensitive for me at all. It's
Got
actually
it.
perfect. It's as if like people were using a mouse with like 400 DPI.
Yeah. I think for
So
mine is like 1400 or something like that. It's in
yeah,
between 1100 and 1400, but that's
yeah,
65. That's pretty impressive, sir.
yeah. It's So I move my mouse in very small like motions, but
Hmm.
because the DPI is so big, it actually is able to drive across the entire screen without like zooming.
Hmm.
My friends will like they make fun of me because we'll play a game and I'll like turn around, my character will spin like 700 times really fast.
I love that. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's really fun.
Oh, it's like, oh, Grant's. What's Grant doing?
Yeah,
He's having trouble with his mouse
he's just
again.
carrying. He's just having fun. Yeah,
He's having fun. He's spinning around.
yeah,
Oh, I love that. So, well, obviously, like we're talking about kind of a lot about the hardware today, but obviously, a good advancement into assistive technology is also part of the software too, and a lot of sort of features and built-in design and options definitely enabled you to play these games, like as we just mentioned, like obviously having to be able to increase the DPI on your mouse and being able to remap controls. and stuff like that. So what are some of the options or features that you generally look for when you're playing a game that in order to be able to help you be more comfortable when you're playing?
Fully customizable controls is a must.
Okay.
If a game, and for consoles, there are system inputs
Mm-hmm.
that you can use. But the issue with that is you have to keep going back into the system to change the inputs,
Right.
which is why I prefer if games have them natively,
Yeah.
not through console support. Um, some assistive technologies somewhat alleviate that, like I know with the Access controller, the PlayStation, there's 3 different profiles
Mm-hmm.
that you can switch immediately with just a press of a button.
Yeah.
Um, so it's nice to be able to have like right now I have 3 profiles set up. So if I'm doing like an RPG, I'll play on profile 1. If I'm doing like a more action-based game, I'll have a profile 2. And then like, if I'm just trying a game for the first time, I don't know what kind it is, then I just have a standard setup with profile 3. But traditionally, fully customizable controls, or at least majority customizable. And then sensitivity,
Mm-hmm.
specifically for PC, not so much consoles. They really rely on sensitivity options because
Okay.
even though my DPI is wild,
Yeah.
um, sometimes games still natively treat your mouse as if it's like 400 DPI or
I
whatever.
see. Okay.
So I do rely on sensitivity increases or adjustments. And then for me, it depends on the type of game. But if it's a game that requires a lot of movement, I prefer auto movement options.
Mm-hmm.
So you just press a button, your character moves, and you can take your hand off the mouse or keyboard or controller or what have you. And that's a newer option that I'm starting to rely on.
Okay.
Not as much as the others, but I have found with like Helldivers 2,
Yeah.
because the maps are so big
Yeah.
and because you're constantly moving,
Mm-hmm.
I'm unable to play more than one match because it's just too much.
Gotcha.
So if
Okay.
there was an auto movement option, I'd probably be able to play significantly more.
Right.
Mhm.
What has been like one like standout either option or accessible game design that you've like really like love that you would love to be able to see be added more into games that would really kind of help you and kind of like give you like a good quality of life update to a lot of games?
There is. Have you heard of Escape from Tarkov?
Yes. Yeah.
The control customization in that game is the best I've ever seen.
Interesting.
You can
Explain.
do for each action, except movement. Movement you can't customize it. You can
Mhm.
customize the button, but not like the input method. So for each action except movement, you can customize if you press a key, hold a key, double tap a key, or like release. So press and release.
Mhm.
You can also double input. So like if I want to pull out my grenade, I can do like W key with like F, right? And then that'll be my grenade key. And then I can choose again, press, hold, release, or double tap. And because there's all these options, I can customize every input, every major input, with just the options available to me, like with my mouse and my keyboard. I don't have
Hmm.
to like sacrifice key movement options. So like for example, if I want to like change my scope in the middle of a match, I can do it with like F and left click.
Interesting.
It's some of the best control customization I've ever seen in any game ever. And I wish more games would study that
Mm-hmm.
to be able to input it into their titles.
Yeah, because so it's not necessarily multiple actions per button, but it's more of like multiple actions per button input, I guess, is kind of the best way to describe it, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, it's like you tap it once, or you double tap, or you hold, and it will do three different things for you, right?
And then, like, if I use like the W key for movement, let's say I do W key plus F, well, then I can do my grenade. So I'm still
Okay.
using the same buttons, just in a different manner to perform different actions.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's incredible. It's truly some of the best I've ever seen.
So in a way, it's almost like kind of like making like accessibility macros in a sense, like within remapping. Oh, I like that a lot. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to like make sure to call that out next time I see that in a game or like see more improvements for. That's really cool. Oh,
it's
man.
something. It's the one game where I've noticed, even with my progression of my disability, I can still play it. I've been playing it since 2019, I think, without issues because of those options.
That's really cool. Oh, I like that a lot. Okay, so let's kind of talk a bit about sort of the history a little bit of a kind of assistive technology. I know that you're not necessarily like a historical expert, but you are a historical expert in some things, especially the Roman Empire. That's a whole other thing. Definitely, you should ask about Grant a little bit later. Talk about the Roman Empire because he's thinking about all. I was trying to make a joke about everyone. Every day everyone talks about the Roman Empire, but you literally do.
I literally do. I have a degree in that.
That is your Roman Empire.
Yeah.
But let's kind of talk a bit about sort of the history and I guess the past of kind of assistive technology. Like, how have you seen assistive technology in gaming improve within the past 10 years?
It used to be very third-party adjacent.
Okay.
Where it would be single or small groups of creators or organizations that would design pieces of equipment based on your specific needs. And the issue with that is, while it's good, they can be very costly. And also it takes time to build. For example, I have a custom, it's over there somewhere, PlayStation 4 controller that has the triggers and bumpers on the sides. It's a standard controller, it's just extra buttons on the sides that act as the triggers and bumpers. That cost $200.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And a month or two to build it.
Oh,
from an organization called Evil Controllers. And I used it for years. It was great. Until I wasn't able to just use a standard controller anymore. And that's not their fault. That's my disability progressing.
Sure.
But we've seen this shift from needing to know the right people or the right organizations to now major developers are making their own devices, while not perfect, give players a much more approachable option. So they don't have to wait months. They don't have to spend, well, usually they don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on these inputs and these setups. They can just go to Walmart, GameStop, Best Buy, wherever, and just purchase a device and bring it home.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I think in a sense, even looking at the history, a lot of it came down to, like you said, like very bespoke type of controllers where it's very customized to the player individually themselves. And then we have like organizations like Special Effect or Warfighter Engage or Able Gamers, like they're jumping in and sort of filling that gap and creating these custom setups for players. I mean, essentially, that's what those organizations really do. Is
Yeah.
that they just like, and that's what they do best. Is that they have people reach out to them and be like, okay, I need this specific kind of setup, and they kind of assess their needs and be able to create a custom setup for them. But like you said, I think that the sort of the drawback to that is that it does take time to be able to kind of create, and also if things kind of change or progress further down the line, because of how bespoke that setup is. It could be like if you like for you, like basically, was there any sort of piece of technology that you just sort of outgrew or changed? I mean, obviously you're not using the controller with the popsicle stick anymore, but were there any are those setups like is something that you think is still like? I don't want to say it's still useful today, but like, are those kind of setups something that that you would recommend for players to still be able to look into if you need a very specific custom setup?
I would say, for me, no.
Okay.
But for the greater community, the issue with that is, as new systems are created,
Mm-hmm.
their internal software isn't compatible with previous setups.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it makes it more difficult for controllers. And I've seen this from stories I've written, interviewing members of the community, where these setups that they've had from either creators or organizations are no longer compatible. With PlayStation, especially with the DualSense,
Mm-hmm.
the PS5 when that released was very reliant on DualSense, and a lot of their games require it to even function.
Sure.
Well, a lot of these setups don't have that, so they're finding that it doesn't work. Um, which is why options like the Access controller are so important, because it's Sony's response that allows players to use some form of adaptive equipment
Mm-hmm.
without having to rely on, again, organizations or creators that eventually will become obsolete as systems evolve.
And that's actually where I perfectly want to be able to lead into, because like as we kind of go into today, where we have like Xbox have with their adaptive controller, PlayStation with their Access controller, and there's still like the third party like Hori controller for Nintendo. Like we're starting to kind of see that the basically, because it's not like a negative, it's saying like, oh, those kind of organizations and those custom setups are going to go away, but like the combination of those now basically extends the life of those types of controllers and those custom setups, because in certain cases the adaptive controller is kind of seen more as a hub where things can connect to it, and still like even the custom setups can be able to connect to it and work like a regular Xbox controller, and sort of similar to the Access controller. So when we see that, obviously, that with this sort of investment from the big publishers, or the big three, essentially, like Xbox, PlayStation, and even with Nintendo, even though they don't create an accessible controller, like I think you are a big fan of the Joy-Cons in and of itself, because they actually are super accessible for you.
Yeah, you can move them in any position.
Yeah,
they're super lightweight. They're super compact.
yeah.
The internal software allows you to have 5 different profiles.
Yes, yeah,
for each Joy-Con.
yeah.
Which
That's really
is
cool.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we have these combination of technology now, like kind of, I guess, into the present, because a lot of people, we talk about, again, like the Xbox adaptive controller versus the PlayStation Access controller, like which is better, which serves the player more, like where, like who, like is one beating over the other, and I think we've had this conversation before, where it's never about one versus the other, it's about one with the other, but creating this ecosystem with all of the custom controllers that are being created, that these are allowing these systems to be able to play together in a way that we haven't had before. So can you talk about a little bit in regards to how these specifically these first party controllers / hubs are able to extend the life of these custom setups, but also extend or like open up the playing field as far as being able to allow more players to be able to play more games using this assistive technology?
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, it is a first party answer, meaning that theoretically, we don't have proof of this, but theoretically,
Hmm.
these controllers should work on different systems in the future because it's a first-party system or a first-party device that already has the software natively into it.
Sure.
And because of that, for people with progressive disabilities like myself, as well as thousands of others, um, you can customize your inputs as you need.
Hmm.
So if I, let's say I lose motion of my left hand down the road, right?
Hmm.
Well, I can just switch up my inputs and make it so my right hand is the dominant hand.
Hmm.
It's a device. Both controllers, even though they're different, are meant to grow with you. They're not necessarily meant to be a temporary solution.
Hmm.
They're meant to be used throughout a system's life cycle, and presumably the net system's life cycle. They're basically a first solution to a bigger issue. And presumably, these developers will be innovating on these controllers and these hubs.
Hmm.
So I'm sure that they won't be the only ones that we ever experience, but they're still meant to be used 5, 6, 7 years down the road
Right.
without any issue.
Right.
It just
And
makes it
as
easily approachable
oh,
for
100%.
consumers.
Yeah, especially because like as you know, they players can be able to create these custom setups for themselves using these controllers, but also using their custom setups they had before. But it kind of extends and creates a much bigger gaming library for them than was possible before because those bespoke setups at the time were exactly what was needed because that's all we had. But now like having these first party controllers essentially kind of now sort of open the gambit wide open essentially to kind of create more accessible experiences. And so it just means more when you have more games that are approachable with these controllers and these setups, it means that more players can be able to play these games. And then now with the conjunction of accessibility being a part of like studios and being included as part of natively within the games themselves, it only adds that third essentially that third piece of the puzzle that can be able to fill in some of the gaps that either the first party controllers or some of the custom setups are not able to do or weren't able to necessarily predict that that's what we're going to be needing to do. It's not about like, oh, you can't do this and it's locking people out. It's just more of, hey, this is something new that we didn't account for when we first made this thing. So now but we're using these games to kind of to fill in those gaps until we, as technology kind of keeps improving. And I wanted to add, I was originally going to say like, what are the sort of the pros and cons of what we have available today? But where do you like, I do want to be able to ask, like, what do you see? Like what would be your like we'll kind of move into a little bit of the future, like what like with what we have today and obviously with the limitations that some of these like setups can have to a certain degree, what would you love to be able to see as sort of like version 2.0 of the Xbox adaptive controller or the PlayStation Access controller that you think could help disabled players like yourself, especially like even someone as yourself that has a progressive disability, still so that make sure that you can be able to play games like 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now.
Oh my god, 30 years.
I know, right? Man, I'll be 70 by that point. I'm hoping I'm still playing games when I'm 70.
I don't know how you can necessarily improve on the Xbox controller currently.
Oh, okay.
Maybe just add more inputs natively. So right now, if you just take the base, like brick, I call it the brick.
Yeah.
I think there's like 9 buttons. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the D-pad, the 2 big circular black buttons, the Xbox center button, and then like the share and options or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe add a native control stick or something along those lines so that players aren't reliant on purchasing everything,
Yeah.
because sometimes people don't need to purchase, entire setups. I think that would be my only hope for the future of that device.
Okay.
For the access controller, I think for me the shape of it should be maybe a different shape.
Okay.
Because for my needs, the access controller has 9 buttons with the main circular bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can only reach 4 of them,
Right.
and because it's a circle, no matter which way I position it,
You're only getting
I'm
access
only
to
doing
those
4 of
four
them.
buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the issue. Is just make it a different shape, or make it a smaller shape in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, it's difficult to say because they're so reliant on what the individual does with them.
I see. Okay.
So out of the box, they look good, but
Yeah.
until you start actually using them and tinkering with them and building your own setup,
Mm-hmm.
it's really difficult to say what should be in the future for version 2 of
Right.
these devices.
And because disability is very much a spectrum, trying to be able to create a device
Yeah,
that is customizable to
for
fill those
everyone.
for everyone, yeah, that's kind of difficult to do. And
Yeah.
at least in the current state, I mean, who knows what could happen in the future? Do you see that maybe also as well? Price it should be a factor looking into the future for adaptive technology, because I mean it's unfortunate that it's kind of commonly known is that it's expensive to be able to, or it can be expensive to be able to get a custom assistive technology set up.
Yeah. For the Xbox alone, which again is why I mentioned it, maybe having a stick or several buttons.
Mm-hmm.
My setup is roughly $350.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
Granted,
Which is more than what the Elite controller is
it's
on the
almost three
Xbox right
times.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost 3 times more.
Yeah.
While it works for me and it works for years, that's still $350.
Mm.
The PlayStation controller is slightly more affordable because it's more of a complete package. However, if you need 2 controllers, that's additional 90. If you need other inputs, that's factoring in that cost. If you need potentially different attachments,
Mm-hmm.
that's an additional cost. So I would say for future devices, more customization right out of the box from a hardware perspective,
Okay.
I think is necessary because while these devices are great, not many disabled people have $350 to throw at a controller. Even though
Sure.
it'll last you for years, many disabled people fixed incomes,
Mm-hmm.
and 350 for a controller is a big expense.
Right. So, what do you see as I guess moving into the future? Are there any positive things, or I'm not saying we've been talking about negative this whole time, but what are some of the things that you are looking forward to in seeing as assistive technology kind of continues to develop?
I love seeing, selfishly, uh, people's setups and what they look
Mm,
like. I love the
okay.
creativity that these 2 controllers have essentially unleashed within the
Mm,
disability community. Because again, before, all these adaptive devices were very individualized and they were only through organizations. So, if you're on the internet and you see someone with a cool setup, it's like, well, you can't get that. you can't recreate it because it was individual to the organization that designed it. But now, if someone uses an adaptive controller or a PlayStation Access controller, you can see that. Oh, I can make that too, based on what's available on the market. And I think that community ingenuity is so important for not only us, but also developers. Because then they can look at it and go, oh, this is what these people are using for, like, fighting games.
Yeah.
Or shooters or what have you. And then maybe they can make their own innovations based on what the community is saying.
Yeah, because you're like being able to be inspired by their setups could create, inspire ideas or creative ideas, and like, oh, we could probably do that, but from a software standpoint, or maybe like from a hardware standpoint. So, because I think like it's not necessarily accessibility specific, but actually it can be to a degree. Is that when you mentioned about Helldivers 2 earlier, was that I love seeing the ingenuity of someone who created on an Elgato Steam Deck, which for those that don't know, it's a device. Basically, it has a bunch of buttons on it. And you can they're basically kind of like macro buttons. You can program them to do a whole variety of different things. Mostly used for streaming, but it can totally be used for other things besides streaming. But one of the things they could do in Helldivers 2 is that because Helldivers 2, whenever you need to throw like a stratagem, which is sort of like gives you special weapons or special attacks or like big huge bombs or lasers coming from the sky, is that you have to hit a sequence of presses on the D-pad, and there's usually like 6 or 7 button presses, like patterns you have to be able to push in order to be able to launch those stratagems. But people have been able to use the Stream Deck essentially to program that so it's just one button, and it basically will, instead of it will just press all those button sequences for you, which is kind of a really cool accessibility thing in and of itself. Even though people are using it's like, oh, just to kind of make it simple, just push that as one button and you're good to go. So I love like seeing that, but that's something that like someone sort of like created as a fun thing, and then it kind of became widely adopted by the player base. And I'm wondering if obviously Arrowhead like looking at that, being like, oh, that's actually kind of a neat idea, and sort of like letting that sort of be a thing in the game. And I hope that more examples like that could be able to be added in the future, especially with assistive technology and with that as well. So
I mean, like there would be like an option where you can choose 3 stratagems in the accessibility menu.
Yeah,
and just pair it to one button.
That would be great. Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's a great idea. We should talk to Arrowhead about that one. Yeah. But speaking actually of developers, one of the questions I have is like, what must game developers understand, in your opinion, to ensure that their games are inclusive to those who use assistive tech to play games?
Hardware limitations are awful. They're the antithesis of community support.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever developers limit what we can use, you're actively prohibiting disabled members from enjoying your games. So I think I understand why studios do this, but I think in the future, if you were to truly create an inclusive experience, you can't limit hardware, because ultimately it's just impacting disabled players more than anything.
Right.
And there are some people, yes, who abuse those limitations, like cheaters and hackers and whatnot. But the vast majority of people are people who actively benefit from them.
Yeah.
For a myriad of reasons, including accessibility.
Yeah.
So when you limit that, it just takes away progress.
Yeah, like I could see why people would sort of think of it as essentially it could be like potentially exploiting that as sort of something to cheat with. But you're right. I think like having that, being able to have that keep as open as possible for for that specific reason, for accessibility, and just it benefits the players who use that sort of setup. I think that keeping it as hardware as open as possible would be great. And then obviously being having your system be a little bit more open, or game being a little bit more open to multiple different types of devices, and it'd be useful, because I sort of think of like stuff like ROMs, or even actually games that that use because you see like all the time, like streamers will essentially like, oh, they're using like a DDR dance pad, or like who was the I think it was Rudism that created basically like a toys controller, like a kid's like a little toddler's controller for Elden Ring, and it's stuff like that, like being able to kind of be like, a lot of games are that open, but making sure that developers are not actively sort of like, hey, like turning those things off, because again, it kind of goes back to that ingenuity and of players sometimes, is that they get to create something that developers wouldn't even think about, and it turns out to be kind of like one of the coolest things about either the game or just in general. So I definitely agree with that one. And then next question is, what are some like resources that players can visit to make their setup more adapted to their needs?
Social media.
Okay.
I think it's one of the biggest resources. I think it's often treated as like a joke, right? But I think social media is one of the biggest tools. You can post questions, you can see other disabled people and their setups, maybe for inspiration. If you're having an issue, you can maybe tag a developer, and sometimes they'll answer. You and I have both seen that plenty of times. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest thing with social media, especially because there's so many platforms now, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Never X, and all these new sites coming up, and forums at Reddit. Reddit has countless forums. That's the best and easiest way to connect with either communities or developers or studios or organizations or what have you, to help solve issues or gain inspiration.
Yep, for sure. Because I think that a lot of those organizations we even talked about are also like on social media. So reaching out to them, and or asking people who are are in the space, and can definitely be a great resource as well. So yeah.
I mean, just as an example, you should remind me. Xbox did ban devices in November,
Right.
and during this period, disabled players were able to reach out on social media and ask them what will be affected. And the team was able to respond and give advice and provide solutions, all because of social media.
Yeah, and they were very receptive to that too, which was great. So, and yeah, I love it when stories like that happen too. So, but you know what? Hey, also speaking of social media, I guess with this we're gonna kind of leave it. Where can people be able to find you online, and follow you and everything, that all the articles and all the stuff that you do?
Most of my work, if not all my work, is shared on Twitter. Never else. At super_crypt1994. My portfolio is on there. It's attached to my bio. You can read all articles. I have a monthly column on IGN called Access Design, where it's all about accessibility and the industry and what's happening currently. I write for Wired, new publications coming up, IGN again, Game Informer, but all those updates can be found there. Also, plenty of shit posts.
Yeah, that's true. And he's got some great posts on there too, so that's great. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Grant, for joining us today and for giving all your insight into your work and and into the assistive technology. And hopefully, you as a listener/watcher or viewer are interested in that too. So thank you so very much for watching and/or listening. If you have any questions, you can either contact either myself, Grant, or even the folks at Player Research if you would like to learn more about what we talked about today. And also make sure to check out the rest of the series of Advancing Accessibility. And you can find all those resources at playerresearch.com. Thanks again and have a great day and go play some games. Bye.